Ever feel like some careers are hiding in plain sight? That's kind of how I felt digging into this cytology screener thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent over some really cool stuff from RoleCatcher, and it's like, whoa, didn't even know this whole world existed.
It's one of those careers, right? Crucial to healthcare, but kind of behind the scenes.
Totally.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, let's break it down. What exactly is a cytology screener?
Basically, they're analyzing cell samples to look for signs of disease, things like cancer, but other stuff too.
Okay, so they're looking at cells under a microscope all day. Sounds kind of intense.
It can be, for sure. The detail work is really important. They're looking for any tiny abnormalities that could indicate a problem.
And these samples, are they from, like, anywhere in the body?
Pretty much. They mention the female reproductive tract, lungs, even the gastrointestinal tract. It's pretty diverse.
Wow, so they're examining cells from all these different parts of the body, but they're not actually, like, interacting with patients directly.
Right. It's a lot of behind the scenes work. But think about the impact. They're the ones who might spot those early warning signs.
That's true. They're like detectives, but instead of clues, it's these tiny little cells.
Exactly. And they're not just winging it. They work under the supervision of doctors and biomedical scientists to make sure everything is accurate.
So there's a lot of responsibility there. It's not just about looking through a microscope. You need serious knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. The guide emphasizes that you need a strong foundation in biology, lab techniques, data analysis. It's pretty high-level stuff.
So for anyone listening who's thinking, hey, maybe this is for me, what are the pros and cons?
Well, RoleCatcher lays it all out. On the plus side, it's a high-demand field, so job security is usually good, and the salary potential is definitely attractive.
Yeah, that's always a plus.
Right. Plus, there's that satisfaction of knowing your work is directly contributing to, potentially saving lives.
That's huge. But like you said, every job has its downsides. What did they say about that?
Well, they stress that you have to have meticulous attention to detail. Like, that's non-negotiable.
Makes sense. Staring at cells all day, you can't be getting bored easily.
Exactly. And let's be real, it can be repetitive work. Plus, depending on the lab, you might be exposed to hazardous materials.
Right. Important to consider all those factors.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, what stands out to you as the biggest plus, or maybe the thing that makes you go, not so sure?
Honestly, it's the mix of skills they need that's fascinating to me. Like, yeah, you need that hard science brain, but they also highlighted communication skills.
Oh, interesting. Why is that so important if they're not working directly with patients?
Well, they still have to communicate their findings clearly, to the pathologists, the doctors. It's all about teamwork.
That makes sense. You're part of this bigger process, even if you're not the one talking to the patient.
Exactly. And this is where it gets even more interesting. They emphasize that learning never stops in this field.
Oh, so you're not just, like, done with school and you're good to go.
Not at all.
Mhm.
New technologies, new discoveries all the time. You got to be a lifelong learner to keep up.
I can see how that would be exciting for some people and maybe a bit daunting for others.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've established you need a solid science background. But what does that actually look like in terms of education?
Well, they get into some specific degree subjects. Obviously, cytology is a big
And
one.
it makes sense. But then there was this other one, histotechnology. What even is that?
Okay, so imagine analyzing the microscopic structure of tissues, like biopsies. You're looking for those telltale signs of disease.
Whoa, that sounds really intricate.
It is. It requires a deep understanding of how tissues are structured, how cells function. It's fascinating stuff.
It sounds like it. And they even mentioned biomedical sciences as a possible path, right?
Yeah, which goes to show you need that broad scientific foundation. It's not just about one specific thing.
And then on top of the degree, they were talking about all these certifications, cytotechnologist, histotechnician. Like, what's the deal with those?
Those certifications are like proof that you've got the skills and knowledge for the job.
So it's a way to stand out, especially in a competitive job market.
Exactly. It shows employers you're serious about your career and that you've gone the extra mile. Plus, it can open doors to higher paying roles.
Makes sense. So it's not just about getting your foot in the door. It's about how you keep moving up.
Right. And speaking of moving up, one thing I was wondering about, is this a dead-end job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, is there room for growth in this field, or are you kind of stuck?
Well, according to RoleCatcher, it's definitely not a dead end. They highlight a bunch of different paths you can take.
Oh, really? Like what?
So you could work your way up to a leadership position, like a lead technician or lab supervisor.
Okay, so there's the management track.
Yeah. Or if you're a real science nerd like me, you could always go back to school and become a pathologist assistant or a biomedical scientist.
So there are options to, like, specialize even further. That's cool.
Right. Or you could explore research opportunities, teach, even move into industry roles. It's pretty diverse, actually.
It's good to know you're not just pigeonholed into one specific thing.
Exactly. And speaking of not being pigeonholed, RoleCatcher, being the helpful platform they are, really emphasizes how they can help you navigate this whole career path.
Oh, so it's not just about, like, finding job postings on their site.
No, they go way beyond that. They've got all these tools and resources to help you explore different career options, develop your skills, even prepare for interviews. They want to be your one-stop shop for all things career-related.
That's pretty cool. So they're not just throwing you into the deep end and saying, good luck.
Exactly. They're there to support you every step of the way.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What does a typical day look like for a cytology screener?
Well, you're not just like clocking in and clocking out. You're analyzing these samples, looking for subtle changes that could be huge for someone's health.
It's a lot of pressure. Like,
Yeah.
you're the first line of defense,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And the thing is, technology in this field is like always evolving. RoleCatcher kept mentioning that. It's not like you learn one thing and you're set.
So you got to be ready to, like, learn new techniques, new equipment, all
Like
that.
all the time. They even suggested getting experience before you even apply for jobs, internships, clinical rotations.
So it's really competitive. They want to see you've been proactive.
Exactly. It's not enough to just have the degree anymore. You got to have that real world experience too.
Makes sense.
Oh.
So let's say you've put in the work, you've got some experience under your belt. What's next? How do you climb that career ladder?
Well, they had some ideas about that too. You could go the leadership route, become a supervisor, manage a team.
Okay, so there's the management track if you're into that.
Right. But if you're more of a science whiz, you could always go back to school, become a pathologist assistant, even a biomedical scientist.
So there's room to, like, specialize even further.
Absolutely. Or you could go into research, teaching, even work for a pharmaceutical company. The possibilities are pretty wide open, actually.
That's really cool. I like how it's not just one straight line. There's flexibility.
Totally. And they gave this hypothetical example in the guide, like a profile of a standout entry-level cytology screener.
Oh, yeah. What made them so special?
It wasn't just about technical skills, though obviously those are important. They highlighted things like attention to detail, being a stickler for protocols.
So it's those less tangible qualities that really set you apart.
Totally. And also that passion for learning, always wanting to improve.
It makes sense. This field is so detail-oriented. You got to be someone who's really driven to get it right.
Exactly. And then they talked about showcasing those skills, like building a portfolio of your work, maybe presenting at conferences.
That's a good idea. It's like you got to toot your own horn a little bit.
Totally. Even something as simple as having a killer LinkedIn profile can make a difference.
It's all about putting your best foot forward, especially in a competitive field like this.
100%.
Okay, so hypothetical situation. I'm listening to this and thinking, all right, I'm intrigued. But what does a cytology screener actually do all day? Paint me a picture.
Well, you'd start your day at the lab, right? You'd get your samples prepped, and then it's microscope time.
Hours of staring at cells.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of rough.
It can be, but it's also fascinating. You're looking for those tiny details that could be really significant for a patient's diagnosis.
Right, so it's not just tedious. There's a real purpose behind it.
Exactly. And while they did highlight all the cool sciencey stuff, they were also honest about the less glamorous parts of the job.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like, there's going to be paperwork, record keeping, you're going to be super organized and follow protocol.
That's not all fun and games with microscopes.
Right. But for the right person, that attention to detail, the knowledge that you're playing a vital role in healthcare, that's what makes it rewarding.
Totally. It's all about finding a career that aligns with your strengths. And if this sounds like something you'd be into, RoleCatcher is a great resource.
They really do try to cover all the bases. They even had a section on all these alternative job titles for cytology screeners, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, yeah. Why is that? Like, why so many different names for the same job?
Well, companies can be all over the place with their job titles. Like, instead of cytology screener, you might see cellular pathology technician or something like that.
It's like they're speaking a different language sometimes.
Right. So it's helpful to know the different terms so you don't miss out on potential opportunities.
That makes sense. It's like you know what you're looking for, but then they call it something else, and you're like, wait, is that the same thing? Yeah.
Exactly. And then to top it off, they even included a whole list of external organizations and websites, places where you can learn even more about the field.
So it's like they're saying, hey, we're not the only experts here. Go do your own research, too.
Exactly. It shows they're not just trying to keep you on their platform. They want you to be informed.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, salary expectations. What did they say about that?
Well, they were a little vague, which makes sense. Salaries can be all over the map depending on where you live, your experience.
Right, like so someone in New York City is probably making more than someone in, say, rural Kansas.
Totally. But they did emphasize that cytology screeners generally earn competitive salaries, so that's good news.
Yeah, no one wants to be scraping pennies. They did mention those certifications can boost your earning potential, though, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And higher levels of education, more experience. It all adds up.
So it's worth it to, like, keep investing in yourself professionally.
Exactly. And speaking of investing in yourself, remember how we were talking about RoleCatcher's AI features? They can actually analyze your resume for you.
Oh, yeah. How does that work again?
So you upload your resume to their platform, and their AI engine goes to work analyzing the content, the formatting,
It's like having a little robot resume writer.
pretty much. And it gives you feedback like, hey, you should use stronger action verbs here, or this section could be formatted better.
So it's not just like, yeah, your resume is fine. It actually gives you concrete suggestions for improvement.
Exactly. It's all about making your resume the best it can be. Because, let's be real, first impressions matter.
Totally. And they also mentioned something about tailoring your resume for specific job descriptions, right?
Yeah. A lot of companies use these things called applicant tracking systems, or ATS. Basically, it's software that scans resumes before a human even looks at them.
Oh, no. So you're competing against robots before you even get to a real person?
Pretty much. So RoleCatcher's AI helps you optimize your resume for those systems, making sure it highlights the right keywords and skills.
So it's like you're speaking the robot's language. That's kind of wild.
I know, right? But it's the reality of today's job market.
Okay, so you've impressed the robots, you've landed an interview. Now what?
Well, RoleCatcher didn't leave you hanging there. They had a whole section on interview prep.
Oh, good. Because interviews are the worst.
Tell me about it. But they give you some really good tips, like how to answer those tricky behavioral interview questions.
Oh, you mean the ones where they're like, tell me about a time you failed?
Exactly. They recommend using the STAR method: situation, task, action, result.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. It's a way to structure your answers so you don't ramble on forever.
Right. So instead of just telling a story, you're hitting those key points the interviewer is looking for.
Smart. So RoleCatcher is basically like your career fairy godmother, guiding you through the whole process.
Pretty much. But they're not just for job seekers. They have a whole suite of tools for employers, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, remember that AI-powered candidate matching engine we talked about?
The one that's like a dating app for jobs?
Exactly. It helps companies find the best candidates for their open positions, which is obviously super valuable.
So instead of having to wade through a zillion resumes, they can use this tool to find the people who are the best fit.
Exactly. It's all about making the hiring process more efficient and effective.
Which is good for everyone, right? Job seekers and employers.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
Okay, so RoleCatcher is clearly doing a lot of cool stuff. But are they the only ones? Like, are there other platforms out there doing similar things?
There are definitely other platforms out there, but what makes RoleCatcher different is their focus on AI.
Right, they're really all in on that.
Yeah, they're using it to personalize the job search, analyze resumes, even provide interview coaching. It's pretty impressive.
It's like they're taking all this data and using it to help people find their dream jobs.
Exactly. And they're constantly innovating, coming up with new ways to use AI to improve the job search process.
Okay, so we've talked about the career itself, the skills you need, the education, the salary potential. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
What's that?
Ethics.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Because as a cytology screener, you're dealing with really sensitive medical information, right?
Absolutely. Your findings could have a huge impact on someone's life.
Exactly. So it's got to be taken seriously.
For sure. And the guide does mention the importance of confidentiality, patient privacy.
Right. So it's not just about, like, looking at cells under a microscope. There's a whole ethical dimension to the work.
Definitely. You're dealing with people's lives here.
And that's a big responsibility.
For sure. And they emphasize that cytology screeners need to be objective, unbiased.
Like, you can't let your own personal feelings or opinions influence your analysis.
Exactly. It's
Oh.
about being accurate and impartial every single time.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I wanted to circle back to something that really struck me while reading through all this material.
What's that?
The impact, like the real-world impact that cytology screeners have on healthcare.
It's huge, but it's easy to overlook because they're often behind the scenes.
Exactly. But their work is so vital. They're helping to detect cancer, diagnose diseases.
Their findings literally influence treatment decisions. It's incredible.
It really is. They're like these unsung heroes of healthcare.
Totally. They might not be the ones interacting directly with patients, but their work is making a huge difference.
And it's a career that requires a unique set of skills, that attention to detail, the ability to stay calm under pressure,
The passion for science, the desire to keep learning.
and the knowledge that you're playing a vital role in something much bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
It's really quite inspiring when you think about it. It really drives home that point, right? These cytology screeners, they're the unsung heroes working behind the scenes to make a real difference.
And it's not for everyone, you know? It takes a certain kind of person to thrive in that kind of environment.
Totally. But that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks.
Exactly. And speaking of different strokes, remember how the guide mentioned technology changing the game for cytology screeners? We talked about AI, but they threw in this other thing, liquid biopsies.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That sounded pretty futuristic.
It's like something out of Star Trek, right? Instead of those traditional tissue biopsies, they're analyzing like biomarkers in the blood.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me a simple blood draw could replace, like, a surgical biopsy?
Well, it's not quite there yet, but it's getting closer all the time. And the potential is huge, especially for cancer diagnosis.
That's amazing. But how do cytology screeners fit into this whole liquid biopsy thing?
Their role becomes even more important, actually. Imagine them analyzing these liquid biopsy samples, using their skills to spot those cancerous cells.
So instead of just microscopes, they might be using all sorts of high-tech equipment.
Exactly. This field is always moving forward. Cytology screeners will be right there on the cutting edge.
That's got to be exciting, to
Yeah.
be a part of something so innovative.
Totally. And a little intimidating, too, right? It's a career that demands constant learning.
For sure. But if you're someone who loves a challenge, who's always up for learning new things, it could be an amazing fit.
I think so. And as these liquid biopsies become more common, more advanced.
Cytology screeners are going to be in high demand.
Oh, absolutely. They'll be the ones ushering in this new era of personalized medicine.
It's incredible to think about the impact they'll have. So to wrap up our deep dive here, if you're out there listening to this and something inside you just clicked,
If you're nodding along thinking, yeah, this sounds like me.
then a career as a cytology screener might be the hidden gem you've been searching for.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to explore it, to learn more. And remember, resources like RoleCatcher are there to guide you every step of the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of cytology screeners. We hope you found it insightful, intriguing, and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep those minds curious, and remember, there's always more to discover.